I never thought I'd be standing here in this antiseptic room, watching machines breathe for my son. The rhythmic hiss and click of the ventilator has become the soundtrack to my shattered world. 17 years old. That's all the time Ethan got. Some nights I find myself sleeping in this uncomfortable hospital chair just to be near him, just to make sure I'm here, when he opens his eyes again. The nurses know me by name now. They bring me coffee in the mornings without asking. It started so innocently. That's what keeps me awake at night as I sit beside his hospital bed, listening to the mechanical breath sounds that have replaced his own. How something that seems so harmless could end with my son fighting for his life. I want to share our story with you, all of it, because maybe, just maybe, it might save another family from where we are now. The first time I noticed something was off with Ethan was at his swimming meet last fall. I remember that day so clearly. It was unseasonably warm for October, and the natatorium was packed with parents clutching paper programs and thermoses of coffee. Ethan had always been our star athlete, breaking school records since freshman year. Colleges were already scouting him. Stanford had even sent a representative to watch him that day. But something wasn't right. During his signature event, the 200-meter freestyle, he surfaced from his flip turn gasping. I could see the panic in his face even from the bleachers. He pushed through, but his powerful stroke had lost its rhythm. He finished the race nearly 7 seconds slower than his personal best, placing fourth instead of his usual first. "It's nothing, Mom," Ethan said later as we drove home, his wet hair dripping onto the leather jacket he'd earned as a sophomore. "Just tired from midterms. Coach has been pushing us hard this week." I remember stealing glances at him in the passenger seat, my golden boy with his father's strong jawline and my hazel eyes. Always so confident, so full of life. I should have pushed harder when I noticed the slight wheeze in his breath. But teenagers are masters of deflection, and Ethan had perfected the eye roll that said, "Stop worrying, stop asking questions." "Maybe we should see Dr. Williams," I suggested, referencing our family physician who'd known Ethan since he was born, just to rule out exercise-induced asthma. "Mom, please," he groaned, turning up the radio to signal the end of our conversation. "It's just one bad race." I let it go, the first of many mistakes I would make in the months to come. 2 weeks later, I was collecting laundry from his room, one of the few motherly services he still tolerated, when I found it tucked in his desk drawer beneath a stack of calculus worksheets. A sleek metal device no bigger than a USB drive. I'd seen enough school newsletters to recognize a vape pen. My stomach dropped. When I confronted him that evening, he was surprisingly forthcoming. "Everybody does it, Mom," he said, leaning against his bedroom door frame with practiced nonchalance. "It's just flavored vapor, not cigarettes. Coach Thompson's son even makes his own juice. It's basically just water and flavoring." His confidence was ironclad, unyielding to my concerns. It helps me focus during meets, takes the edge off before big races. I made all the standard parental arguments about addiction and health risks. He countered with the rehearsed responses kids share among themselves. It's safer than cigarettes, no tar, not addictive, everyone does it. You can't believe everything you read online, he said, as if I were the naive one. Besides, I only do it sometimes. I'm not stupid. I confiscated the device, of course. We grounded him for 2 weeks, had the obligatory family meeting where his father and I presented a united front about substance use. Ethan nodded at all the right times, looking appropriately contrite. We thought the matter was resolved. We were wrong. By Thanksgiving, Ethan's cough had become a regular presence in our home, a persistent hack that would wake him at night. Sometimes I'd hear him in the bathroom at 2 a.m., running the shower to create steam because it seemed to ease his breathing. I scheduled a doctor's appointment for Thursday. I told him over breakfast one morning, watching as he pushed his eggs around his plate without eating. "Cancel it," he insisted. "It's just a cold that won't quit. Half the swim team has it. Must be something going around school." His father backed him up. "Boys this age, they're always catching something from each other. All that time in chlorinated pools doesn't help either." I canceled the appointment, my second mistake. By Christmas, Ethan's times in the pool kept dropping, not dramatically enough to raise major concerns, but enough that his coach mentioned it during parent-teacher conferences. "He seems to get winded more easily," Coach Benson said, his brow furrowed with genuine concern. "Might want to check for asthma or maybe an iron deficiency." The wheeze in his breathing was more pronounced now. I noticed how he would take the stairs more slowly, sometimes pausing at the landing to catch his breath. Sometimes after swim practice, he'd sit in his car for 15 minutes before driving home, claiming he needed to decompress. I later learned this was when he'd take long pulls from his new vape, the one he'd hidden more carefully after we'd found the first. His friends knew. Some of their parents knew too, but subscribed to the "at least it's not drugs" philosophy that had become increasingly common. Looking back, I'm ashamed at how I let my guard down, how I chose to believe him when he said the cough was just seasonal allergies. The holidays passed in a blur of family gatherings and college application deadlines. Ethan seemed to rally somewhat, and I convinced myself that whatever had been bothering him was resolving on its own. His father and I were preoccupied with my mother-in-law's cancer diagnosis, and Ethan's issues took a back seat to the more immediate crisis. This was perhaps my greatest failure as a mother, allowing myself to be distracted from what was happening right under my nose. By Valentine's Day, Ethan had started skipping swim practice. He, who had never missed a day in the pool since he was 8 years old, was suddenly finding excuses to stay home. His coach called, concerned. "We've got regionals in 3 weeks, Coach Benson said. If Ethan wants to qualify for states, he needs to be in the water." When I relayed this to Ethan, he exploded in a way that was completely out of character. "Maybe I don't care about swimming anymore," he shouted, slamming his bedroom door so hard that a family photo fell from the wall, the glass shattering on the hallway floor. That night I heard him coughing again, a deeper, more rattling sound than before. When I knocked on his door to bring him some honey tea, he wouldn't let me in. "I'm fine," he called through the door, his voice hoarse. "Just leave me alone." The next morning, I found spots of blood on his pillowcase. This time, I didn't take no for an answer. I made the doctor's appointment and drove him there myself, sitting beside him in the waiting room like I had when he was little. He wouldn't look at me, his hood pulled up over his head, shoulders hunched as if trying to disappear into himself. The doctor listened to his lungs for what seemed like an eternity, her face growing more concerned with each passing second. She ordered chest x-rays immediately. "Have you been vaping, Ethan?" she asked directly after examining him. He hesitated, then nodded slightly. "How often?" "I don't know. A few times a day, maybe more." "For how long?" "About a year, I guess." A year. The words hit me like a physical blow. A whole year of hiding, of lying, of slowly poisoning his lungs, while I remained oblivious, distracted, trusting. The diagnosis came the next day: severe inflammation in his lungs, consistent with what the pulmonologist called vaping-associated lung injury. An X-ray showed white cloudy patches where there should have been clear lung tissue. His oxygen saturation was dangerously low at 89%. The doctor's words still echo in my head. This is what we're seeing more and more in teenagers who vape. The chemicals in these products are causing severe damage. Ethan was prescribed corticosteroids and instructed to stop vaping immediately. He swore he would. For a few weeks, he seemed to improve. His breathing eased, the coughing subsided. He even returned to the pool, though he tired easily and had lost much of his former endurance. I found myself breathing easier too, believing we'd caught it in time, that we'd learned our lesson and could move forward wiser and more vigilant. Then one evening in late April, just as college acceptance letters were arriving, including one from Stanford with a partial swimming scholarship, I came home to find Ethan collapsed in the driveway next to his car, blue-lipped and barely conscious, his vape pen still clutched in his hand. The paramedics arrived within minutes, but those minutes stretched like hours as I knelt beside my son, trying to help him breathe, watching the terror in his eyes as his body failed to perform this most basic function. "Ma'am, how long has he been like this?" one paramedic asked as they strapped an oxygen mask to Ethan's face. "I just found him," I said, my voice distant and unfamiliar to my own ears. "But he's had breathing problems. He was diagnosed with vaping-related lung damage a few weeks ago." The paramedic exchanged a knowing look with his partner. "We're seeing more and more of these cases," he said grimly. In the ambulance, Ethan lost consciousness completely. They intubated him right there, sliding a tube down his throat to force air into lungs that could no longer do their job. The ER doctor explained that Ethan had suffered an acute respiratory failure. His lungs were filled with fluid, a condition they were seeing with alarming frequency in young vapors. When they lifted his shirt, I saw how his ribs protruded with each mechanical breath, how the muscles in his neck strained to pull in air that his damaged lungs couldn't process. "We're admitting him to intensive care," the doctor said, her hand on my shoulder. "I need to warn you, his condition is extremely serious." That was 6 weeks ago. Since then, I've practically lived in this hospital room. Ethan's father comes when he can, but someone needs to keep working to pay the medical bills that are mounting daily. Our insurance covers some, but not all, and certainly not the experimental treatments the specialists have suggested might help. In the endless hours sitting beside Ethan's bed, I've learned more about vaping than I ever wanted to know. How the liquids contain chemicals like diacetyl, which causes irreversible lung scarring. How some black market cartridges include vitamin E acetate, which coats the lungs like oil and prevents oxygen transfer. How nicotine in these devices is often many times higher than in cigarettes, making them wildly addictive, especially to developing teenage brains. I've learned how vape companies deliberately target kids with fruity flavors like cotton candy and unicorn milk. How they've created concealable devices that look like USB drives, highlighters, even asthma inhalers. Perfect for hiding from parents and teachers. How they employ influencers on social media to make vaping look cool, sophisticated, harmless. I've also met other parents in the ICU waiting room whose children are here for the same reason. There's Lisa, whose daughter Harper collapsed during cheerleading practice. There's Miguel, whose son Diego developed what doctors initially misdiagnosed as pneumonia. We form a grim support group, sharing stories and comfort, united by the same regrets and fears. Ethan's friends visit sometimes. They stand awkwardly by his bed, horrified by the tubes and wires, the way his once athletic body has withered. Some have thrown away their vapes. Others still cling to the belief that it won't happen to them, that Ethan must have gotten a bad batch or had some underlying condition. Teenage invincibility is a powerful force. His swim team held a vigil last week. They gathered at the pool where Ethan had broken so many records, lit candles that reflected off the still water. His coach gave a speech about Ethan's dedication, his natural talent. "We're keeping his spot open," he told me afterward, though we both knew the likelihood of Ethan ever swimming competitively again was vanishingly small. Stanford has deferred his admission and scholarship, contingent on his recovery. His graduation gown hangs in his closet, unworn. His diploma was mailed to us after I attended the ceremony alone, accepting sympathetic hugs from teachers and parents who had known Ethan since kindergarten. The doctors are not optimistic. The damage to his lungs is severe and potentially irreversible. There's talk of a transplant, but the waiting lists are long, and Ethan's condition makes him a complicated candidate. Every day we watch the numbers on his monitors, praying for improvement, for some sign that our son is coming back to us. Yesterday, his younger sister asked if she could have his car if he doesn't come home. The innocent cruelty of her question nearly broke me, but I understand. At 14, she's trying to process this in the only way she knows how. I told her no, that Ethan's car will be waiting for him just as we are. Last night, something happened that gave us the first glimmer of hope we've had in weeks. Ethan opened his eyes, not fully conscious, not responsive to commands, but his eyes tracked movement briefly before closing again. The neurologist said this was a positive sign, that despite periods of oxygen deprivation during his collapse, his brain function appears to be intact. But even if, When Ethan fully regains consciousness, the road ahead is long and uncertain. Pulmonary rehabilitation, possible lung transplant, a lifetime of medications and limitations. His dream of swimming for Stanford is almost certainly over. The carefree teenage years that should have been filled with proms and first dates and college preparations have been replaced by hospital rooms and breathing treatments and uncertainty. All because of a sleek little device that delivered poison disguised as water vapor. All because of an industry that profits from addicting our children. All because we, as parents, believed it wasn't as bad as cigarettes. Because we thought our warnings were enough. Because we trusted too much and questioned too little. The most painful part is knowing how preventable this was. How a few moments of teenage rebellion, fueled by peer pressure and misinformation, have stolen years from my son's life. The vape companies market these products with fruity flavors and sleek designs that appeal specifically to kids. They downplay the risks and emphasize the coolness factor. And our teenagers, wired to take risks and believe in their own invincibility, are the perfect targets. If I could go back, I would have done so many things differently. I would have talked to Ethan earlier and more directly about the real dangers of vaping, beyond the generic "don't do drugs" conversations we had. I would have connected with other parents to create a united front. I would have checked his room more thoroughly, monitored his spending more closely. I would have taken that first vape pen as the serious warning sign it was, not just a teenage indiscretion. But I can't go back. All I can do now is share our story, hoping it reaches other parents before they find themselves where I am. Sitting beside a hospital bed, counting their child's mechanical breaths, wondering if they'll ever hear their voice again. Ethan's last words to me as they wheeled him into intensive care were, "I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't think it would be me." That's the thing about these cautionary tales. No one ever thinks it will be them until it is. So please, if you're listening to this and you have teenagers, don't make my mistake. Don't assume they know better. Don't believe that vaping is a safer alternative or a passing phase. Have the hard conversations now before it's too late. Look in their rooms, check their backpacks. Know what these devices look like. They may not resemble what you expect. Talk to their friends' parents. Create a community of vigilance. And if you discover your child is vaping, treat it with the seriousness it deserves. Get medical help immediately. Don't wait for symptoms to appear, because by then, irreversible damage may already have occurred. Because the sound of a ventilator breathing for your child is a sound you never want to hear. And the weight of knowing you might have prevented it is a burden you never want to bear. This is Ethan's story, but it doesn't have to be your child's.